It's been a while since I've got a bit excited about a new 4-star character coming into the game, and thank God Hoyoverse actually decided to make a good 4-star new wire, and that is going to be Ororon. He's definitely a worth it character for you to start building if you do happen to get him. Now overall, it's technically not a must for you to actually try and pull him off of the character banner, but if you do happen to have him, I think he's a very good addition to your team, because overall he is a Natlin character, so he can use Cinder City set to actually help buff your team, and technically speaking he is one of the better character out there in Natlin at this point in time to use the set. And also he's got the ability to apply Electro off-field for you, while being able to do pretty decent damage if you do invest into building him as a sub DPS character. Now technically he's going to be working better if you slot him into a team with Hydro characters, so that you can do Electro charge damage, which is where he unlocks its maximum potential of helping you do even more damage off field for you. So definitely he's going to be a character that's geared more toward an Electro charged team. However, he's not a character that is pretty much required or locked in an Electro charged team, you know, like characters such as Charus for Overload or Nulu for Bloom team. Those characters are pretty much locked in, while Ororon is not, so that's going to be the main difference. Now I've seen that a lot of people also try to compare Fischl to Ororon as well, and technically speaking there are also distinction between these two characters, and while they're pretty much not always on the same page, because Fischl is more toward a single targeted situation. If you're more toward in a group dealing situation, Fischl is gonna be having a bit more trouble, while Ororon's, whenever he uses his burst, you do have access to that bit of AoE. Now however, overall Fischl will still outdamage Ororon in most cases if you're purely just looking into damage. However, in terms of buffing capabilities, Ororon will always have a much better capability because you've got access to the Cinder City set. Not to mention, if you got access to Elegy on your account, you can potentially just give that to Ororon as well, making him having access to even more buffing capability for your whole team, which is really nice. So in terms of buffing potentials, Ororon wins all the time. And so overall, we've known what Ororon capability is going to be, but the more focusing thing I want to look into in this video is which kind of team comps will Ororon fit into, and will that make the current team comps of the character that he's being in a better teams. So the first team that we basically have already known is that he technically fits in a Chaska team really well. I think I've already discussed a little bit about this in my Chaska team video, but purely from the fact that he's got access to Cinder City buff has already made him one of the better considerations in terms of support character out there that you may consider whenever you're building a team. And especially from the fact that most of the time Shilonen won't be used on a Chaska team, Ororon is definitely going to be next in line. He is also an Electro character that Chaska can make use of, plus you don't always have to invest too much into him, but you just have to invest into him being a support character, and he can do off-field damage, which is something that Chaska love. Very much a fitting thing for you to fit him in. So overall, he's a perfect character for a Chaska team. Another character that he can work pretty well in is gonna be a Neuvillette team. Now overall, Neuvillette Electro Charge team has always been one of the better team out there in the past. We usually use Fischl as well, but now Ororon is also a pretty nice character to be there with the Cinder City set, running alongside with Furina, and you can potentially also get Shilonen to be in. Interestingly, these two characters both use Cinder City set. However, the good thing about Shilonen is that she is a Geo character, therefore she can also make use of the Archaic Petra set. So yes, you're having a Cinder City buff, a potential Archaic buff from Shilonen is a little bit hard to get the correct elements sometimes, but since you do have both Furina and Neuvillette here to apply Hydro elements, you can mostly sure that Shilonen will get the Hydro buff for you, and then of course you got the Furina buff for Neuvillette as well. It's a really nice team. I've used it alongside with my Neuvillette and I really enjoy it, so definitely try it out if you do have a Neuvillette on your account. Another team is definitely going to be a specific Electro Charge team that we've been having forever, and that goes with Sucrose, Ororon, Xingqiu, and Fischl. Now this team do really well. Unfortunately, you're missing out a little bit on healing capability. The only thing you have is basically Xingqiu. So while you do have to rely on your skill a bit, but while if you're already specifically using 4-star character at this point, and I'm probably sure that you're focusing on a free-to-play account, and if you're a free-to-play account, you're probably going to be relying on your skill most of the time, right? But this team is also very good, especially with a slight buff to electro charge damage. Obviously, it's not too significant to make it electro charge pretty much a meta team, but it is a lot better for you to use electro charge character anyway. Overall, still a very powerful team. Now, the team do use a lot of EM, so technically speaking, if you really want to go for it, you can build EM onto your Ororon. But obviously, you know, the character who's going to be triggering electro charge is definitely going to be all over the place in electro charge team. It's a little bit hard for you to manage that properly. So yeah, investing into EM for many of these characters is just going to be the way to go. Other than that, we've got a Navia, Furina, Ororon, and Shilonen team. Same, you know, similar case here. Ororon on Sinnoh City and Shilonen being on Akai Petra. Really nice. You're going to specifically try to get Akai buff for Furina. Very nice team for Navia, because now you don't really have to try and slot in your Bennett and Xiangling, and you can save those two characters for your team, because technically speaking, you're already having really nice character for buffing Navia around here. A character that in similar situation is going to be, you know, you can use Raiden Shogun, or technically any other electro DPS like, you know, Sinnoh, Kuching. For, you know, the Ororon, Furina, and Shilonen core are pretty nice and can be swapped out from some of the other DPSs that we may discuss. Now, Raiden and Kuching, I've specifically tested these two characters of mine out, and I find it to do very, very well, because obviously they're having so many buffs from all these three characters, making it overall a lot more justifiable for you to put them in an electro charge team, whereas before it's a little bit hard to justify that. So that's a very nice addition for electro DPS character. Other than that, we can have, you know, Child electro charge, where you slot him in a Ororon, Bennett, and a Fischl team. Yeah, I think this is a fine team. I think Child International is still a lot better, where you have Xiangling, Bennett, and Kazuya. Overall, that's still one of the better team for Child. But if you know you'd like to play around with a little bit of Child team, then yes, you can potentially slot him there. Other fun team you can play around with, you know, specifically Alekino, and then slot her into an Overload team. Overload reactions, also a very nice team for you to build around her, because technically speaking, Alekino do not need a healer on her team, right? She can just sustain herself. So Ororon, Fischl, and Chavrus will be able to help a lot out with, you know, either Overload as well as buffing, especially Chavrus. If you have an invested Chavrus, Alekino Overload team will be able to deal you very, very high number. I don't even have a C6 Chavrus, and this team can still help me clear the abyss. So yes, you can see Ororon don't always have to be in a specific electro charge team for him to do very well. If you want to still play around with him in other type of electro reaction teams, he can still be fine. Which leads us to an interesting team of whether or not he works in a Hyper Bloom team. And I have to say, this time around, he is pretty decent, being as a character that triggers Hyper Bloom cores. Because well, as you can see, his bursts basically, you know, do a rotation and scans the area around him. Obviously not too wide of an area, and you will still have to position him well whenever you use him in a Hyper Bloom team, because while he is technically a circle impact character, therefore you will have to be aware of that. Well, obviously not as good as Kuki Shinobu, but if you wanna have him, you know, played in a Hyper Bloom team, he can still do fine. I've tried him out. He, you know, it's pretty decent. You do have to invest into EM building, because technically speaking, he will be the character on your team to trigger the Bloom cores. But that just goes to show that you still have, you know, multiple different teams that he can find himself in. So overall, guys, those are going to be some of the team recommendations for Ororon at this point in time. If you do have any other team, don't forget to leave it down in the comment section, as I always love to discuss with you guys there. Hopefully this have already given you some of the team comps for you to build around with Ororon. Now guys, I have a lot of other team comp building, especially for Chaska if you just pulled for her. So if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, don't miss out on my future Genshin videos, and also check out the Chaska build and team comp video here if you haven't already. I really appreciate you guys staying with me till this part of the video, guys, and with that, I wish you a super day, and I will catch you on my next video.